Okay, go ahead, Kyle and Beth.
All right. Well, thank you for having us tonight. My name is Kyle Richter, and I am the Watershed Programs Manager at the Musconetcong Watershed Association. We're a nonprofit in Northwest New Jersey that is dedicated to protecting and improving the quality of the Musconetcong River and its surrounding watershed. And joining me tonight, we have Beth Styler-Berry from the Nature Conservancy, who I'll let introduce herself.
Hey everyone, I think I've actually presented to your club many years past when I was still at the Musconetcong Watershed Association. I'm now with the Nature Conservancy. I work out of the Chester office when that was a possible place to work. Now I work out of my home. But I am the Director of River Restoration. I work throughout the state of New Jersey, and I do some work that reaches across borders. I focus on dam removals, but I have some other projects as well.
And tonight we're going to be, as you can see by the title of our presentation, talking to you about the an introduction to dam removals in New Jersey. So to start, we should probably know what a dam is. So under New Jersey law, a dam is an artificial barrier that raises the level of a stream more than 5 feet above its usual mean low water height. So it is a barrier in the stream that does cause the water behind it to be raised. And dam removals have been happening in New Jersey for quite some time. The first recorded permit for a dam removal was the Paytex Pond Dam, which is on the Crooked Brook in Morris County, and that was in 1980. And that was shortly followed by the Pottersville Dam removal, which is on the Raritan River in Hunterdon County, and that was in 1983. So just a little bit more about what a dam is. So this is a diagram of an embankment dam. So there are no like standard dams. Every dam is different, could be made with different, filled with different materials or serving a different purpose. So you can't find like a standard dam diagram anywhere, but we have a few to show you tonight. So this is an embankment dam or an earthen dam. This is typical of a dam you would find at a reservoir, helping to hold back water. But we do have an auxiliary spillway, the crest here, which is the top of the dam, and then the outlet down here. So on this type of dam, the water actually comes out the bottom of the dam, as opposed to if you have had the pleasure of kayaking on the Muskie or some other rivers, most of the dams, the water comes over the top. Kind of like this. So this is another example of a dam. So this is a concrete gravity dam, and it relies on its own weight to help hold water back. And in this diagram, the mill pond or the pond behind the dam would be on this side, and this would be the downstream side of the dam, where it is directly on the foundation of the stream. Right. And so where are there dams? So basically anywhere there are people, you can find dams. So these two maps show dam locations in New Jersey, and this should be called could be called the map of early settlement in New Jersey, because where people were settling is where they were building these dams originally for power purposes. The map on the left, sorry, on my left and right sometimes get a little mixed up, is just showing you the locations of the dam, where the map on the right is showing you the locations of the dams and their prioritization for removal for ecological gains for the purpose of androgynous fish, which are fish that return to rivers for spawning. So as you can see, there are quite a few dams in New Jersey. There are actually over 1,700 dams in the state of New Jersey, and those are just the regulated dams when we're talking about that there's 1,700, because if you remember from the definition of a dam, that is when it raises the water level above 5 feet. So any structure in the river that is below that, so even 4 feet, is not a regulated dam. So it is not on one of these maps, but there are hundreds of those types of structures that can be found throughout the state. And so then we are going to move into dam classification. So the New Jersey Bureau of Dam Safety classifies dams into one of 4 categories. And these categories show the degree of risk to life and property below them. So you have class 1, which are high hazard, high potential. So the failure of that dam may result in a probable loss of life or extensive property damage. Whereas when you go down to these class 4 dams, those are small, typically small, low hazard dams, and the failure is not expected to result in life or significant property damage. So this is just, when we talk about these classes, we're not talking about the condition of the dam. We are just talking about what is the risk of, if it was to fail, what could happen. So then we get into the condition of the dam. So along with class of the dam, so class 1 through 4, there's also a condition given to the dam. Satisfactory is that there is no existing or potential deficiencies recognized. And then we go all the way down to unsatisfactory, where they are considered unsafe and require repair. And the New Jersey Bureau of Dam Safety also categorizes the dams by satisfactory, fair, poor, and unsatisfactory through inspections of the dams. And the inspection is based on a rolling cycle. So class 1 dams are inspected more frequently than those class 4 dams that are inspected less frequently. And in this bottom picture over here, you actually have a picture of the Lake Shawnee Dam in 2010, which actually did fail. And I believe it had previously failed before this as well. I forget what year, I believe maybe it was in the early 2000s, there was a series of dam failures in Sussex County that kind of had a ripple effect, and this dam failed then as well. But the Lake Shawnee Club had to pay for the repairs for this structure. So like I said, there are over 1,700 dams that are regulated in New Jersey, many more that are unregulated. Out of those 1,700, 8 are classified as unsatisfactory condition, and 1 is a high hazard, and 1 is a significant hazard. And 321 are in poor condition. And Morris and Sussex counties have the most high and significant high hazard potential dams, with a total of 62 in poor condition. And so this is just a little bit of the history of dams in New Jersey. And now Beth is going to talk to us about why we remove them.
Okay, so there are a whole bunch of reasons that people remove dams. One of them is safety and security. We tend to think of dams as waterfalls. We sort of kind of naturalize them in our minds, but they are just like a bridge or a culvert, just another piece of infrastructure, and they need periodic maintenance and repairs. Otherwise, you know, there will be issues, just as if you had a bridge in a town that was never inspected or maintained. You have the same potential for failure in a dam. And there are dam failures in New Jersey. These are, I think this is probably through 2018 or so, but every big storm event for sure, we do have some dam failures. Nothing spectacular. We haven't had, a big gigantic dam failure like you might have heard of in Michigan or California, but we do have dam failures, and we have them both in, associated with storm events and on what we call sunny day events, which means nothing in particular spurred the failure, but the dam failed. And not going to read these all to you, but just so you get a sense, these are associated with, are you having a hard time hearing me?
You cut out for just a little bit.
So somewhere very nearby are my AirPods, and it's telling me that it just switched to them. So if you hold on one second. Okay. I'm actually going to put them in and see if that makes sure we don't doesn't happen again. Okay, are we good now?
Yep.
No?
I can
Yes.
hear you, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so you can see what you're looking at here are really storm-related failures, and that's why you're seeing 14 at a time, 18 at a time. So these are, you know, smaller dams usually that fail with as a result of storms. All right, so I'm not going to read you this big long list, but just so you get a general idea that ecological uplift is a, you know, one of the big drivers of dam removal, and there are many benefits from removing a dam. When we have a dam in place on a river, it changes what should be a flowing river to more of a lake-like situation, so that the animals that were native to that flowing, you know, possibly rocky bottom stream are now living in, you know, a lake kind of situation. We have higher temperature, we have lower dissolved oxygen. That rocky bottom that would be great for spawning or for foraging for food is now kind of covered with silt. So lots of ecological uplift comes from removing a dam. So we see the number of dam removals increasing not only in New Jersey, but from coast to coast. So Kyle, I think on one of his first slides, said that the first dam removal in New Jersey was 1980, and then we waited till 83 for the second one. Well, now we're getting, you know, several a year, up to 10 a year in New Jersey, and we've moved from a couple a year back in the 80s, and now we're up to 70 or 80 a year nationwide. And this is picking up, and the reason, well, it's kind of twofold. The all of the ecological benefits of dam removal are becoming more and more clear as we have more and more before and after situations to look at the river's health. And also, as these dam age, the average age of a dam in the United States is greater than 50 years. So many of them are, you know, upwards of 100 or more. But as these pieces of infrastructure age, right, if it's owned by a town or a private citizen and they're responsible for, you know, inspections every third year and maintenance and repairs anytime a dam is found deficient, you could imagine that that is a great incentive to remove the dam. And I think what you're looking at there is a small dam, but it's up in on Lake Rutherford. And when that dam failed, they found that they did in fact need to replace it. They didn't have an option at that time to replace it. And now, Kyle, if you wouldn't mind, the next slide. What happens happens again nationwide, but in New Jersey, we have a good example of, and that the previous photo was the example. I think you'll see in a second the newspaper clipping, but this happens to dam owners all the time. When a dam is first given that hazard classification that Kyle talked about, the dam may be classed as a low hazard dam because there's nothing downstream. And then when they review the hazard class, there can, you know, be 2 or 3 housing developments downstream, a highway, a shopping mall. So all of a sudden now, if the dam is to fail, there is, you know, a high chance of significant property loss or even loss of life. So we call that hazard creep, or risk creep. It means that a dam that starts out with a pretty low hazard winds up, when it gets reclassified, as a higher hazard. And that's exactly what happened to that little dam that we just showed. I think, Kyle, if you give me a click, we'll see the quote from the mayor. And this is exactly what happened at that Sussex County dam, where, you know, it was a low hazard. And now, because of downstream development, the town is faced with rebuilding to a much more robust structure, because downstream development has increased, and they're going to have to make sure that they bulk that up. And of course, there's a cost associated with that. So this is another situation where a dam owner may consider removal rather than not only make the initial investment, but now you're kind of on the hook for every third year inspection and potential improvements or maintenance. Okay, another factor we touched on is safety and security. And what's happening now more and more, and I'm sure that you folks see it as you paddle, there were giant chunks of land that were industrial, okay, and the Columbia Dam removal on the Paulin Skill is a good example of that, where now the property is in public, in public ownership. That's now in the middle of a wildlife management area. So we've taken dams that were kind of off limits to the public, and we've made them the centerpieces of recreation areas, and we've invited folks to come out. So it's not really a surprise that dam related drownings are increasing. New Jersey does not do a very good job of dam related drowning, of tracking them. I take a look from time to time. I go onto the Whitewater pages and see. This is just kind of a sampling. Again, New Jersey isn't tracking them, so you kind of have to track them on your own. Pennsylvania does track, and Pennsylvania has over 200, I think, of the drowning related deaths. They're the highest in the nation. And again, it's because people are being invited to come out and recreate near dams. I don't think I need to tell paddlers the hazard of dams, particularly the Low Head Dam that has the very dangerous hydraulic on the other side. As experts, folks know that and they recognize it, but a lot of times those look very benign to people until they're right up on them or in fact in trouble. Okay, and last but not least, the driving factor of the ecological proof of concept. So, people, conservationists, environmentalists will say, hey, let's take the dam out and, great things will happen to the river. We've now had several years passing on some of these bigger dam removals, and we are absolutely seeing migratory fish return, the Musconetcong, the millstone, the Pollenskill, the South Branch, I think, of the Raritan, the one that was just removed 2 or 3 years ago. So we are seeing fish migration reintroduced, and it's not just that we do these things for fish or for a particular fish, but as we see, they're just great indicators for habitat healing. Is when we can see a good sized fish like a shad swimming upstream and surviving, thriving, and reproducing in a river. It's a great indicator that you've now improved river health.
Yep, and so you go from having a scene like this. So this is the Hughesville Dam.
Okay, so you're still muted, Kyle, or is this supposed to be my slide?
No, this is my. I think this is me now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Can Beth hear me though? Is it? All right. So this is the Hughesville Dam on the Musconetcong River. So Beth is shaking her head that she can't hear me. No, Beth, you can't hear.
I still can't hear Kyle. Is it just me?
I can hear him fine.
Right.
I can hear him fine.
Yeah, sorry. All right. So like I was saying, this is the Hughesville Dam on the Musconetcong River. This is actually the first notching of the dam for that removal, which was in September of 2016. We had a big press event, and as you can see, this is in the picture is in the bright pink shirt is former Secretary of State Sally Jewell. But you can see the dam here. I think it was about 15 feet high, but you can see the water behind it. This is the dam impoundment. It was full of muck and sediment, and we were out there dredging with a big boat and pumping out sediment that had built up over the last 100 years. But you go from a scene that looks like this to a scene that looks like this, where this is Pat Hamilton from the New Jersey Fish and Wildlife Service holding an American shad at the base of the next structure on the river. So behind her, you see the Warren Glen Dam, which is the tallest dam on the Musconetcong River, standing at 35 feet. So we removed the Hughesville Dam in September of 2016, and that following summer, I believe this picture was taken in June or July, American shad were seen at the base of this structure, just waiting for the day that they can explore the rivers past the Warren Glen Dam. So as Beth was noting, we do see a pretty quick return to a healthy ecosystem in these streams. You also go from having a stream that looks like this, which is a mucky sediment filled structure. If you can see in this bottom picture here, these boards right here, or in this other picture, this cement right here is the top of a dam. So you're looking into the impoundment. So you have hundreds of years, in some cases, worth of sediment and muck and algae growing. You have slow moving water, which is often warmer and not great for fish habitat. You have lower dissolved oxygen levels, not a great place to call home. But when you remove a dam and do the subsequent restoration, you end up with stream beds that look like this. We have a rocky, silty bottom, and you can see in this picture we have fish and even a mussel right here, who are able to enjoy the home. And on these rocks, if you were to flip them over, you would find lots of different macroinvertebrates who make up the base of the food chain for many species of fish and other organisms. So with the removal and subsequent restoration of these structures, we see a really quick return of healthy habitat. So Beth, this is now yours.
Okay, and I think I've solved my audio problems. Okay, so another one of those driving factors, and this is where we overlay climate change with those failing structures, those older, those impaired structures, the ones in need of maintenance, of which there are many. I think that the estimate for fixing all of New Jersey's dams is in the tens of millions of dollars if we were to do those. And Kyle, I think you can go to the next one, and I think we will see our state climatologist talking about how, I don't know if folks saw it, but there was a very large article in the New York Times, I think about a year and a half or so ago. And one of the things brought out in that article was that New Jersey is showing some of the quickest and most consistent effects of climate change. So one of the effects that affects dams is that as the atmosphere, as the air warms, it can hold more water. So while we are not seeing average total rainfalls in New Jersey climb, we're seeing the storms come in shorter, more concentrated bursts. So that is exactly the kind of thing that an aging dam cannot withstand.
If I could just put in a quick plug for our next meeting. Dr. Robinson is the speaker at our next meeting on March 2nd. So
okay. That
was a very good mention. Thank you, Beth.
Okay, and I did see him speak recently, so hopefully you'll see that same fantastic presentation, because it's very interesting and goes much deeper into exactly this. Okay, Kyle, I think I'm good. Okay, so just a couple of references here, and I'm also going to throw into the chat when Kyle resumes. We've seen two major, very notable recent dam failures. In the summer of 2020, we just saw two very large dams fail in Michigan. And the year before in California, we saw the Oroville Dam, which is the tallest dam in the country at 770 feet, fail. And that is because its watershed has been seeing more and more rain, for exactly the reason that, the air temperatures have been rising. So the amount of water being held is rising. And then all of that water collects in the reservoir and leads to major and very scary. I think in the case of the Oroville Dam, the repair was $1 billion and 200,000 people had to be evacuated as a result. So some pretty serious stuff and pretty well documented cases where dams are being compromised because we have this increasing precipitation and changing patterns in precipitation, I should say more accurately, due to climate change.
All right. And so now we're just going to go into a few dam removal case studies for you. So this map up here is the Musconetcong Watershed. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, the Musconetcong Watershed is in Northwest New Jersey, in Hunterdon, Warren, Morris, and Sussex County. The headwaters for for the Musconetcong River is right here, and that is Lake Hopatcong, the largest lake in New Jersey. And from there, the Musconetcong River flows for 42 miles until it meets the Delaware by Riegelsville. Parts of the river are designated as a national wild and scenic river, and there have been at one point 23 dams on the main stem of the Musconetcong. 5 have been removed, and by removed we mean by associations like the Musconetcong Watershed Association, and 8 have been breached, and by breached we mean they are not intact, they are not full, and that has been done by Mother Nature itself. So out of the 23 dams, 5 have been removed and 8 are breached. And then on the tributaries, especially up in this lake region, I think there are upwards of 30 dams that can be found up in this region as well. The first dam removal on the Musconetcong was the Grundyke Dam in June 2008, and that is in the Hackettstown region, which I think is this dam right here. This map can be found on our website, and it actually is really cool in that it shows you the location of all of the dams on the Muskie. Those in green have been removed, in yellow are breached, and red are existing. And then the last dam removal to occur on the Muskie so far was the Hughesville Dam, which I showed you a picture of, which is right here. And that opened up 5 miles of free-flowing river. The Watershed Association is currently working with partners to explore the removal of the Warren Glen Dam, and the Army Corps of Engineers is working on the removal of the Bloomsbury Dam. So we have more projects coming. And when both of those, the Warren Mill and Warren Glen Dam and the Bloomsbury Dam are removed, there'll be 15 miles of free-flowing river restored to the Muskie. So just dive a little bit deeper into one of the dam removals. This is the Finesville Dam. It was removed in November of 2011, and it was located about 1.6 miles up from the confluence of the Delaware River in Hunterdon and Warren counties. So the Musconetcong River is the county dividing line for its entire length. So in its southern lower portion, it is the Hunterdon and Warren counties, and then farther up is Morris and Sussex County as well. So this one was in Holland and Powhatan townships, and it was 9 feet tall and 109 feet long. And it was originally constructed for an iron forge around 1751 and reconstructed at least once around 1953. And it was a concrete dam. And so as you can see in this top picture, this is pre-removal. In this middle picture, this is the removal in progress, and then this bottom picture is the post-removal. A lot of the driving factors around this dam removal were safety. So this dam unfortunately was known for 2 fatalities to be attributed to it. And another reason that this dam was removed was to reduce localized flooding. So I think just prior to this dam being removed, New Jersey was hit with Hurricane Irene, and the local village of Finesville, which you can see some of the houses right in the backgrounds of these pictures, were flooded. The dam caused the water to build up behind it, because when you have a dam in place, you are reducing the floodplain and the flood storage of the river. And so the village of Finesville did flood, and that was not uncommon for this village. There was frequent flooding in the area. And since the removal of this structure, there have been very minimal, if any, flooding in Finesville. So the removal of these structures can greatly reduce the flooding in a community just by helping to reconnect it to the floodplain so that the river can handle its flows. And as well as migratory fish passage. If this structure was not in place, the American shad that we talked about would not have been able to make it upstream. So we go from this picture, right? So this is the Finesville Dam. I believe this picture was from Hurricane Irene, and you can see the village here with flooding going up into the village. And I believe this was 48-ish hours after the flooding. So there is a road right here. So if you had been out here right after the end of the hurricane, you would not have been able to go down this stream as well. To this. Now it's a nice free-flowing stream with a nice riparian buffer here that can help act as a floodplain and absorb some of the floodwaters. And up next is Beth with the pollen skill.
Okay, so the Nature Conservancy has been working on a bunch of restoration projects in the pollen skill watershed. If you look at the, Kyle, can you show hyperhumus there, the yellow area? That's the headwaters of the pollen skill. So we're working on a 1,000-acre wetland restoration project in there. If you see all of the orange areas along the main stem and some of the tributaries, those are tree plantings. There are altogether 52,000 trees planted by the Nature Conservancy along the stream over the last 4 or 5 years. And then the two red triangles are that's the upper one was the County Line Dam on the county line right between Sussex and Warren County. The next one downstream is the Paulina Dam. And then right at the confluence with the Delaware is now a white triangle to show a removed dam, and that is the Columbia Dam was removed in, the last pieces of it came out in early April of 2019, and we had shad swimming upstream right to the base of the next dam up, right to the base of Paulina, a 10-mile stretch we had. Within 17 days of the dam removal, we were finding shad 10 miles upstream. So the other two red triangles are on the docket to be removed. Both of them are in the permitting stage. Up from those is the Pollenskill Lake Dam. And like many dams where we have settlement, right around the lake or a lot of recreation use, that is not the owner is not looking to remove that. So that is a dam that falls into the category of continued maintenance. And I'll just put in this little plug for a free flowing river. If you're familiar with Pollenskill Lake, you are also familiar with the algal blooms that happen just about every summer there. Okay, so that's something that when we do unnaturally dam a lake, Lake Hopatcong is another example. That is a dammed stream, and we have harmful algal blooms. And again, due to higher temperatures and warmer water, these things are happening more and more frequently. So Kyle, if you want to give us another click. So this is the before. The Columbia Dam was 18 feet high and about 300 feet across, and you can just about see the confluence with the Delaware from here. It's not even a quarter mile upstream from the confluence. So it effectively, took the entire Pollenskill out of contention for spawning or foraging from migratory fish. Okay, then we see the next one is just maybe 3 or 4 months after removal. That's it. There we go. So a lot of times people say, oh, if you take out the dam, you're going to leave us with a big mud pit. It's going to be horrible. So again, this is, not even 4 or 5 months after removal. What you can't really see very well is on the far bank there's about 1,000 trees that have been planted. So that newly exposed, that was all underwater, that newly exposed bank will be fully planted with trees. So, and then I think there's one more photo or not? No, okay. All right, so I think this.
It's still you.
That's still me, okay. Okay, so I also wanted to introduce you guys to something called the New Jersey Statewide Dam Removal Partnership. This is our vision here, that by 2025, that people will, be more accepting. It'll be socially and ecologically acceptable for dam owners to consider dam removal instead of always dam repair or dam rehabilitation. So we want to, there are dams, as I mentioned, that are not coming out. Lake Hopatcong Dam not coming out, water storage like Merrill Creek, right? Those are not candidates, but anytime we have a willing owner and it makes sense to remove a dam because it, is obsolete, which most dams are in the state of New Jersey. The Statewide Dam Removal Partnership is a kind of a group of nonprofits and state and federal agencies that get together quarterly. Is it on the next slide, I think, Kyle, or this is kind of our little mission, if you will, that we seek to advance the removal of antiquated, dangerous, or ecologically detrimental dams. So we do understand that there are some that are staying. We discuss, the technical issues of dam removal. We talk about, regulatory hurdles and, monitoring and things like that. And we also talk to the public. Anytime that we have a dam removal scheduled in the community, we kind of come together and make sure we can inform the community of what's coming.
Yeah, so just to build off of what Beth was saying, this is kind of the layout and structure of the statewide dam removal partnership. You have the statewide dam removal partnership, and then we have kind of subcommittees off of that help deal with different portions of dam removal. So along with the removal is the prioritization. So they developed the map that we saw at the beginning that helps us kind of figure out, so which dams, if removed, would have the biggest ecological impact. Monitoring is a big component of dam removals. You want to make sure that what you are doing, you are monitoring to make sure that fish and water quality are being improved. We have a policy committee who works with state and federal agencies on policy related issues. We have an outreach group, as Beth said, that gets together to help make sure that we are sharing the right and proper information for dam removals. And then we have the funding group that looks into opportunities for dam removal funding, because these are expensive projects and funding is always appreciated and is most oftentimes the barrier as to why a private dam owner has not taken the necessary steps for their dam. Additionally, as Beth mentioned, we share featured projects and updates from our work groups throughout the dam removal partnership. Additionally, the statewide dam removal partnership has created the website njdams.org, and this is kind of our clearinghouse for all of the information from the statewide dam removal partnership, which includes some of the information you've heard tonight on what is a dam, the anatomy of a dam. Then we go into, we have frequently asked questions on how to remove your dam, and we have more detailed case studies on dam removals from not only the Pollenskill and the Musconetcong, but rivers throughout the state of New Jersey. And we have recently been doing some webinar series that can now be found on our website as well. So I encourage you, if you haven't had the chance to check it out, if you want to learn more about dam removals, visit njdams.org. And so that ends our presentation on introduction to dam removal. And we'll be taking questions from you guys in just a second, but I do want to have a shameless plug. The Musconetcong Watershed Association is hosting a virtual wild and scenic film festival. So as you heard me mention, the Musconetcong River is a national wild and scenic river, which only 0.25% of all rivers in New Jersey get that designation. And we're going to be holding that on Friday, February 26th. And if you want to register, you can visit our website. And if you register and can't attend, you'll be getting a link to view all of the videos for up to 24 hours after the event. So if you can't attend on Friday, you should still register so that you can see there's, I believe, 12 videos that are a part of this series. So with that, we will open it up to questions.
Okay, well, thanks, Beth. That was very interesting. Couple of housekeeping items. Obviously, if you want to ask a question, you're going to have to unmute yourself. The mute button should be is normally in the bottom left of your screen. If you're not seeing any buttons along the bottom of your screen, just tap on the screen and move your mouse, and they should appear. You can also type questions into the chat box. So, Dave, I see you have your hand raised. So I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, great presentation. Thank you. I have one question. What drives people to initiate dams if they're not really natural and it costs money to build them and maintain them? And the reason I ask that too is because of a specific example, the Tox Island dam project on the Delaware River back around 1980 was a big hullabaloo. And then I think Ronald Reagan, if I got my facts straight, kiboshed it. Maybe for the reasons you guys were discussing today, I don't know. I mean, what's in it for people to build a dam and have to maintain it? And
Okay, well, I for one am frequently grateful that the Tox Island, although it, you know, was a mess and a gigantic inconvenience, and more so than an inconvenience for certain families, but super grateful that the fact that that project did not go through is what lets the Delaware River be the largest free-flowing river east of the Mississippi. So very grateful to the river gods for that one. So why people do it? They did it because they were able to get power from a dam at a time when there was, you know, prior to, you know, dams, people have been building dams for 5,000 years. But in addition to, you know, getting the mechanical labor, mechanical power out of a dam, in places where it was possible, they also would take ice from the melt pond during the winter months. So for many years, for the Grundyke Dam, if you're familiar with that one, there are people who refer to that as the ice house dam or the ice pond dam, because while it did run a small grist mill, its real function was for folks to go in and cut big chunks of ice at a time when there was no refrigeration. Most dams did double duty. So even if a dam was made to power a grist mill, or some of them were, I can think of some that were knife factories. There's one that made axes and axe handles, you know, the lathe, it would turn the lathe. But those, when the river froze, obviously you couldn't get power from a dam because the river was frozen. It couldn't turn the turbine, but then folks would go out and harvest the ice.
okay,
Okay. Thanks,
Thank
Beth.
you.
So there are a couple of questions. Sorry, do you have a follow-up, Dave?
nope, just thank you.
There's a couple of questions in the chat. Philip's asking, what are the next removals coming up?
How you want to take that, and then I'll throw in a few?
Yeah, so on the Musconetcong, we have, as I mentioned, the Warren Mill Dam, which is the next intact structure. We're currently in the feasibility stage of that one, so it's a long process for getting through the feasibility, the design, the permitting, before you can actually get to the removal of a dam. So we're currently in the feasibility stage, so working towards removal. The Army Corps of Engineers is working on the removal of the Bloomsbury Dam, which is just upstream of the Warren Mill Dam in Bloomsbury on the Musconetcong. We're also working on a couple of breach dams on the Muskie as well. One is known as Beatty's Mill in Hackettstown, and I believe Beth, the Nature Conservancy, is working on a few.
Yes, we're working on the two that I pointed out on the Paulin scale. So the Paulina Dam, the County Line Dam, and we have also put in a funding request. We don't know whether or not we'll be funded for it, but there are two dams right at the mouth of the Delaware on the Pequest. There's one that the state owns that, again, is just literally a stone's throw from the confluence with the Delaware. And then there's one that's kind of right in the center of town there. So the funding applications that we have in for that would fund the studies required for permitting it. We did not put in for the actual construction cost, just the engineering studies.
Okay, thanks. So there's another
Hey,
question in the
Peter.
chat. Sorry,
Peter, can you hear me?
yeah, go ahead.
I had a question. I had the opportunity to work several years ago with the NJDEP dam safety, I don't know what they called themselves then, group commission or whatever it is. At that time, it consisted of two professional engineers. Hopefully that group got bigger through the last several years, but there was an issue with a dam that I was involved with, and we got eventually some 20-page report on repairs to the dam, but the words removal never were uttered by NJDEP. Is there, are you folks on the same page usually with DEP? Because when I dealt with them, there was never a question about removal. It was always repair, and repair was obviously very expensive, and hundreds of thousands of dollars for the one that I was involved with. The owners had a charge. Luckily, they had deep pockets and pay it, but it was an issue. So, and it was repaired eventually, but are you always on the same page with DEP, or is there some issues where the state may not be on the same page as the nonprofit groups?
So we're trying, and the statewide dam removal partnership is only about 2.5 years old. You know, for some reason, it's the Bureau of Dam Safety. I'm sure that you worked with Michael, but you know, for some reason, they will not like say the words dam removal unless the owner says it, right? Because they say we don't want to encourage, you know, dam removal versus repair. You know, the owner has to, you know, but it's you know, it should always be put out there as far as I'm concerned, because I can tell you this, that you are not going to raise funding from, you know, all of the variety of different funders that are out there to repair your dam. There's just nobody's going to hand you money for that. But if you have a dam that is in the right place, right? So it's something that's going to make a big ecological impact, then there are, you know, plenty of funders. Now, it's not like it's easy to get money, but it's certainly easy to make the applications and eventually you get traction. There is the Atlantic Coastal Fish Habitat Partner. There's the Delaware Partnership, the Delaware Watershed Conservation Fund. U.S. Fish and Wildlife has different funding sources. I mean, there, you know, there's way to fund a dam removal. There's not a lot of ways to fund, you know, fixing your dam. But I agree with you 100%, Mike. I know exactly what you're talking about. And we are really trying to change that and make sure that dam removal, the whole idea of dam removal is well known so that dam owners know that they have that option.
You.
Okay, thanks. So got a few questions queued up. I'm going to start with Alex, who in the chat is asking, what is hyperhumus? I think that was a reference to the pollen skill.
Yeah, so it's oddly, it's on the one of the the headwaters branch of the pollen skill. It was 1,000 acres of peat, like very diverse wetland habitat. It was well known for lots of rare wildflowers, rare birds, you know, like it was this fabulous, you know, biodiversity mecca. And then they started to mine the peat. So they mined it to, you know, do things like, you know, bulk up people's lawns and put it into bags and sell it at Home Depot, that kind of stuff. So the peat is, you know, the peat moss that you can buy at the store. Hyperhumus was the name of the last business that owned it. It was Hyponex, I think, first, and then it was Scott's for a while, and then it became Hyperhumus, and that's the name that stuck. I think the official name is the Pollenskill River Wildlife Management Area. It's up in Lafayette in Sussex County, Lafayette, Hampton, and there's a third town, maybe Andover. It's right in that area. It's a great spot to go, and hopefully it will, if we can get some funding, it'll be rehabilitated to the greatest extent. But sorry, long answer to a short question, but I know it's a funny name.
Thanks, Beth.
No, thank you. That's very enlightening. I've been up right in that area. I worked in Newton, and that's near, people will know Lake Arrowflex is right up in that area too. And I've seen the Scott's, you know, building. So, okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, so Andy Anderson, you have a question?
I have first a follow-up on Dave's earlier question, and then I have a question of my own. In regard to Dave's question about why are dams built, I was involved with the removal of a dam that was built for rather an odd reason compared to other dams. And that was on the Raritan in Bridgewater. I was working on the, it's now the American Cyanamid Superfund site, but it was a chemical plant back in the 1920s. And at some point, I'm not sure just when it was built, but they put a pipe, a concrete pipe, I think it was 5 or 6 feet in diameter, across the river that had holes on the downstream side. And that was used to discharge wastewater from the plant. But it also constituted a dam. So it was a diffusion dam, they called it. And that was taken out in 2009 or 2010, somewhere at that time. So just that was another kind of an odd use of a dam. And then my question is, I saw in some of the maps that Kyle mentioned, there's some dams classified as breached. So what constitutes a breached dam rather than a removed dam?
So the breach dams are no longer fully intact. So there's a chunk of them missing, and that was done by Mother Nature due to a storm event or something like that. So an example would be the Beatty's Mill dam in Hackettstown. I'd say maybe about 15 feet of the dam is left, and then the rest of it has washed away. Or some dams, like the Newburgh Dam, which is just downstream, have like a hole in them, and water is just coming through them. So breached is something that Mother Nature has done to the dam, and it is no longer intact or serving its purpose, and usually makes it a little more of a hazard.
What is the owner's responsibility on a breached dam?
So I think that they still have, if it's a regulated dam, right? So first, let's say if it's less than 5 feet, which many are, it wouldn't be regulated. The DEP wouldn't even have it on its radar that it's breached. If you own a dam that's regulated, it should be inspected, and they should have seen it before it was breached. But if they see it after it's breached, I believe you do have some responsibility for repairing it or officially removing it.
Okay, thanks, Beth. So for the question in the chat from Betty, how many dams are there on the Passaic River? Do you know the river by river counts?
No, I don't. And we can try to get back to you, but it's a little hard sometimes to know the definite answer, because we can look at the regulated dams, but there can be another 50 that are not regulated. So, the unregulated dams are equally as effective as stopping fish migration. So from an ecological point, even though they're small, they're still doing that same kind of damage. They're stopping sediment transport. They're even stopping resident wildlife from moving up and down the stream as they should.
Yeah, I know there's one, I believe there's one in Chatham. There are dams just above the Little Falls and the Great Falls, but obviously that
Well, the only one that I remember is the Dundee Dam in what is that? Elmwood Park?
Yeah,
Clifton.
so,
It's in Clifton.
Clifton.
It's in Clifton.
yeah, so that's at now the limit of the tidal waters. So that's presumably the river used to be tidal, presumably all the way up to the Great Falls until that dam was put in. But yeah, and then there's at least one place where there's a railroad bridge that effectively creates a dam because the abutments are close together with some rocks in between. Okay, so there are, in the chat, there are 3 questions that are sort of related. Michael Capizzi says, after a dam is removed, does the river upstream become narrow and shallow? Dave Miller is saying, so dam removal is good for the environment. Does it improve the quality of paddling? And Carrie's asking, how does it affect kayaking on the river?
I can take the first crack at that, and Kyle, see if I leave anything out, but when you do a dam removal, the best way, the fastest way to know what the river is going to look like after the dam is removed is to look downstream. So if you're at a bridge and you're looking upstream and you see the dam and then the milk pond, just turn around and look downstream. If the river is typically 80 feet across or 60 feet across, once the dam is removed, the river is going to go snap right back to its typical width. The only thing that's widening it and making it into a big pond is that dam. And then what does it do to paddling? So if you liked paddling in the impounded water without current, it's going to change. So there are going to be some boats that are going to be, you know, not as suitable for the newly freed river that were suitable for the impounded water.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I would add goes back to the river after a dam is removed. For the Hughesville Dam, when we were working on the removal of that one, Beth was our executive director at the Watershed Association at the time, and she had me in the impoundment with my snorkel gear on, and I was snorkeling, and we actually found the tree trunks that had been cut when the dam had been built and put in place. They were still preserved because they had been underwater for so long, and we marked them with balloons, but tried to take a picture. It didn't turn out so well, but when the structure was removed, you can actually, if you go to the site now, see those stumps in place, and the river has gone back to its original channel that it was before the dam had been put in place.
Okay, any follow-ups on those questions about the effect on kayaking and the river course?
It'll also remove a portage, obviously. I mean, if you have to portage around the dam and the dam is gone, it takes away that portage. And it makes it safer, obviously, because they are a hazard for paddlers.
Okay, Alex, you have a question?
I was just curious to see if you got any feedback from the town of Belvedere, how they were thinking of the removal. I used to live there, and I know the second dam is like a main feature, excuse me, of the town. I mean, it seems picturesque right there. So I just wondered if you got feedback on, you know, how the town was taking that. Or
So that's an excellent question. The town is actually very excited about having the dams out because they do make flooding worse. And it's a town that gets hit and hit and hit again by flooding. And they have repetitive loss properties. So FEMA is saying, you know, we're done funding that anymore. So
Okay.
they're gonna, you know, they're removing houses, and that's removing their tax base. So that's one thing. Another thing is, the dam is owned by the one that is in the center of town, right? As you say, a characteristic landmark. It is built into the two buildings on either side of the river.
right, yeah.
So it really depends on, you know, what do those people think, because they are the owners of the dam. So they will have a very hard time trying to sell that building, number one. So they would like it out just so that they have freedom to sell the building. They get flooded, so they're interested in getting it out because they get flooded. They don't want the liability, right? It's a public safety hazard if somebody, you know, drowns or whatever. It's their piece of private property. So, you know, again, the key thing is, how does the owner feel? And the owner is interested in having it out. But I will say this, that every dam removal that I have been involved in, which right now is at 7 and will hopefully move toward 9 pretty quickly, every single time we make sure that we leave something behind that is nice looking, that is attractive. And we'll do the same thing there. I mean, we understand that that is a centerpiece of the town. It's what people are used to seeing. We would not just like yank it and go, right? So we'll probably want to put some feature in there where we still have, you know, a nice rapid going through there. But it's a very good point, because people, they get very attached to these things that they think of as waterfalls and not as dams.
Yeah, that's what it looks like, but that would be great to get that out. That's P-Quest.
Yeah.
So if that was out and that other one was out, you could really have a nice stretch.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's another question in the chat. Carrie's asking, she says, presumably beaver dams are not as destructive to the environment as man-made dams. And if that's the case, what makes the difference? And do beaver dams affect migratory fish?
So here's the difference. If a big old storm is going to take it out, it can't possibly be as effective, or as destructive, right? So in the short term, can they build a dam that is going to make a pond as big as, if you or I went in there and did it in concrete? Yes, they can, but it tends to be a shorter term disruption. And would it block migratory fish? It would depend. I mean, theoretically, if the dam was in the right place seasonally at the right time, yes, I would imagine that there would be fish that could not get through that. But again, you don't usually see a single beaver dam staying in the same exact place for, season after season after season. We see them, they break, they rupture, the beavers die, they go to a better place, so it's not that same 200 years of concrete that we see with a man-made dam.
Okay, so I have a question for the paddlers in the audience. Is there anyone here who has paddled a stretch of river, both when there was a dam there and again after it was removed? Do you have any comments?
Well, of course I have.
I thought you might have, Bob. Go ahead.
Actually, we had, Jim Moore and I were paddling on a Round Valley release into South Branch Rockaway Creek one day last of 19, I believe. And we came across the removal of the Burnt Mills Dam. So we got to, on the Lamington, and we got to watch that for a while. And it's very interesting there because that had been breached years ago naturally, and the river made a course to the left all the way around it. And it was kind of always tricky because a tree would come down in that little area, and it was always hard to wonder if you could get a clear passage through there. But once they opened that up and they made a little rapid feature in there right above the Burnt Mills Road Bridge. And there's two nice little riffles through there, and it is very nice, very good. And I had a question for Beth. Chris Myers and I have been anxious to do the Paulins Kill and go through Columbia. And it seems like, is the state going to open up that area down under Route 80?
So let me tell you, there's nobody more eager than I to have that open up. So we finished, the Nature Conservancy finished the job in April of 2019. As I mentioned, we went to the state, we said, okay, we're ready to go and close out the permits. And they required that we waited until January of 2021. So another 16 months before they would consider reviewing the project and, giving us the finish. So we had an appointment with them for January 19th, and they canceled at the last minute. So we now have that same appointment for them to come out and take a look at the site on February 22nd. So many people are very frustrated about that. I mean, if you ask me personally, I don't think there's any reason that the site needs to continue to be closed.
Okay. Well, the other thing, I remember paddling years ago on the Musconetcong and getting to the Finesville Dam. And the only way to really portage that was on the Warren County side. You had to kind of climb down the concrete wall and pass the boat over. And it was a good 10-foot drop. We passed the boats to one another because the properties were fenced in, and the other side was the Hunterton side was an old factory, and it was all fenced off. So there was no way out essentially. And I remember, I think it was 2000, after a big hurricane, a gentleman who just moved out that way and had just retired, he was looking at he decided, oh, this is a great place to take my kayak at high water. And they found him in the Delaware, I don't know, a week later or so. But now it's really nice to go through there. It's just a nice, really, it's a nice little feature, a nice little run, and it's really, really nice. Last question I had is that Paulina, is that actually on the schedule to come out next year or? So
the permits were just put in at the end of 2020, just right before the new year. Typically, the permit process takes a good year. If we get super lucky and permitting goes very smooth, and I always say money falls out of the sky, so money's not an object and the permitting goes quickly, theoretically it could come out in 2022. Realistically, I think we're looking at 2023 for Paulina.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, very,
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Keep
Yeah.
raising this.
I have one more question.
Sure.
okay, go ahead.
Are you familiar with the Rockaway River?
Somewhat.
Down in Booton, there's a waterfall. Maybe it's 6 feet or something like that, but that's not really a dam, right? I mean, it's just a waterfall. So everything we're talking about doesn't really apply here. Or?
Well, so I don't know if is it a real, are you sure it's an actual waterfall?
Well, no, there's some concrete off to the, at least I haven't got over the waterfall, so I don't know exactly what's under there. But off to the left is concrete, which I think was part of a dam originally.
Yeah, so my gut tells me it's probably, a man-made dam. Now, if it's a natural waterfall, then, that's the way, that's the way it should stay. But I don't know specifically where you're talking about, but I have my gut just telling me that's actually a dam.
So the maps that you showed us at the beginning, is that on a website? And are those like dots clickable so you can get more information, or?
So unfortunately not, and that is one of the most frequently asked questions. For security reasons, the Bureau of Dam Safety will not release the exact locations, and also, these are fair enough, these are pieces of private property, but they will not release the exact location, the condition, or the hazard ranking of any dam. So we have like a super secret data agreement with them. And because of that agreement, which is signed by everybody right up the line in the DEP, we were able to get that information to make the map. But, I'm not allowed to, not that I'm capable of making the map, but it's not something that we can share. We actually just, Kyle, right, 24 hours ago, got another question, somebody asking exactly that, can we see the actual locations, unfortunately.
Yeah, and while so the dots are not clickable on the map is on njdams.org, and you can make it a little bit bigger, but that is unfortunately the best we can do for you.
Yeah, so basically, if you want to find, if Dave wants to find out if this is natural or artificial, if it's over 5 feet or under 5 feet, there's not like one place to go to find that out.
So you can always send me a question like that, and I can ask the DEP. I can say I have an inquiry. Do you want me to point them your way, or do you want me to answer them? And it's going to be a 50-50 mix of what they say.
They can tell you, but they have to kill you afterwards.
Exactly. You see it worked, right? You see they have me scared. I'm scared. So.
Everyone knows a lot about the other side of that waterfall, and there was a button factory. I think it was a famous button factory. I don't know if they make buttons or whether that waterfall would have helped them with any of the machinery or anything like that.
Definitely sounded like a dam.
Yeah,
It definitely sounds like something that was put in there to generate power and turn some equipment, yeah.
yeah, because even if they were just driving like lathes or drills or
Yep.
whatever, they would have had some sort of power need. Okay, any other questions?
Oh, by the way, I'm sorry to add this because we used to do the Rockaway River every Memorial Day weekend. And I went down it a few weeks ago, or about 4 weeks ago or so. And it's totally different now. They cleaned it up and they changed something about the takeout. And I had to get out on somebody's property by no trespassing sign, as a matter of fact, and go through a couple of people's backyards to get out because I was afraid I was going over the dam. And then I went over to look at it like, why couldn't I figure out where to get out? I've been there, 50 times. They just changed it. Instead of where we climbed up by the poison ivy and everything, it's all wood chips. I don't know if you'd make it up there. So just FYI, anybody thinking of going there.
Okay, yeah, and actually I see Jim has another question. Martin has a comment. Martin has a comment that the Ramapo River has a few low-head dams that can be dangerous, necessitating portaging. They're privately owned, but don't seem to be currently used for anything. And Jim is wondering if you know anything about the rights of paddlers to portage around dams if they're on private property?
So my guess would be if I was a private property owner, I prefer somebody to portage than risk their life on my dam. I sometimes think of that sort of, I tend to not think of that as trespassing. I tend to think of that as borrowing access is the way that I refer that. I'll put it back when I'm done with it, but I need to borrow access for right now. There's no way that they can stop you from being in the water, as you know, but I can't imagine somebody preferring that you risk going over a dam. It would be crazy for them to do so.
Okay, well.
Maybe
well,
that's something we could explain to people the next time we're getting in trouble for portaging.
Yeah, don't tell them I said it though, but
No, definitely not.
it's a very good
We could
concept,
we
right?
could just give them we got a couple attorneys here and they could just explain, the difference and the
Yeah.
risks involved, and maybe they'd let us
Yeah.
through their property.
Andy, did you have a question? I saw your hand go up. You're on mute.
Nope, that was a thumbs up.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I wasn't looking so closely. Okay. So one more from Monica. How do you find out if a dam is privately owned? Is that in the super secret database too?
It kind of is. But so, every dam is obviously it's owned by someone. A giant chunk are owned by the state. They can be owned by cities, schools, fishing clubs, private lake clubs. They can be owned by a whole variety of folks. But, if it's sitting between two houses, it's going to very likely be owned by one, or also not unusual two. Since the property lines tend to go to the center of the river, we very often work on dams that have two owners split at the middle. And we very often work on dams that the people who purchased the piece of property had absolutely no idea that they also purchased the dam. We see that very often. Something that is never disclosed when it changes hands because people just, they think of it as a waterfall. They don't think of it as a piece of private, property that's attached to their house.
So our lawyers on the call, Michael and Bob, I assume that's something you would include in your title searches. And
yeah, you have to look at the old, the survey and we even on the Hughesville Dam, there was, the tax map showed one thing, and then the deed, if you read it carefully line by line and you go out there and you walk it out, you can see exactly who the owner is. And another time we were giving it was like a public meeting on Finesville, and somebody stood up in the back and said, "Hey, I think I might own the Bloomsbury Dam." And sure enough, he did. But he had no idea when he purchased the house, and that's a good sized dam.
okay, so one of the disadvantages of property along the river, you might end up owning something in the river you didn't want. Yeah. Okay, I think we're out of questions. I'd like to thank Kyle and Beth very much. Remind you that the Wild and Scenic Film Festival coming up that Kyle told us about. There was a mention of that at the bottom of my email about this meeting, so that the link is there too. We've got the state climatologists coming to talk to us on March 2nd. So that will give us a good overview of the likely effects of climate change on the waterways in New Jersey. After that, we don't have anything yet for our April meeting, but I think maybe it's time just to have a social, and maybe we can talk about where we're going to paddle and how practical it will be to do group paddles. And in the meantime, everyone can look out at that snow and just think about all the nice water it'll create when it
Oh,
melts.
yeah.
So, thank you, everyone.
A
Thank
little more.
Thanks for having us, and be safe out there.
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
it looks like Martin's gonna be very safe.
The creature of the Black Lagoons with us.
Thank you.
All right, see you, folks.
Okay, thank